review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is a psychedelic psychologist, integrative mental health and trauma, no other than Miss Shai Hipperson.
Hi,
Welcome to Book.
Danny.
Yes, welcome to Book 101, Miss Shay. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Sure, thank you for having me this morning. It's a beautiful day here in Brisbane. It's the first time we've had some sunshine in a while. But as Daniel mentioned, I am a psychedelic psychologist. I see adults presenting with different difficulties, generally complex trauma, addiction, and people that have done recreational psychedelics that need a bit of support. While I don't endorse recreational psychedelic use, I do know that it happens in our community. And I do offer support for people that are feeling a bit of anxiety after some experiences they may have had.
Miss Shay Hipperson, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. What what personal experiences or philosophies inspired life's golden ticket, and how did they shape the story?
Yeah, sure. So this book was probably the most pivotal and influential book of my study career to become a psychologist. I had had quite a serious car accident in my early 20s. At that time in my life, I was pretty set on my goals and the future trajectory of my career. I sustained quite serious spinal injuries and had to undergo quite serious spinal surgery to correct some of my injuries. At the time, I was not really a book reader. I was a couple of years out of high school. I was, a young adult living my life and never really found any value in books. I didn't really know what I was looking for. And one day I kind of found myself maybe about 2 months after my accident just on Google. And this book popped up, and I couldn't tell you what possessed me to buy it, but I'm so glad that I did because it changed my life forever.
Indeed, change your life forever. The title suggests a metaphor for transformation. What does the golden ticket symbolize to you, and why you use a carnival as a setting?
Yeah, so what I found most intriguing about this book was Brendan, the author, he had also had a car accident. And I guess the metaphor of life's golden ticket is a second chance. And that is very much what I took away from that book as well. It is a very brief book, but I immersed myself in, I guess, the journey through the carnival. And that was really meeting different people in life and taking away different lessons to apply to yourself. And while life has trials and tribulations of difficulty, there are lessons to be learnt in everything.
Indeed. So, how did you balance? How did the author balance the fictions of the novels of self-help motivational core?
Yeah, so for Brendan, and particularly in this book of his, it was really an opening of, well, here is the difficulty. Then along came a person that was involved with the carnival. They had a lesson for him, and then going through the process of whether it was a carnival ride, a game, an event that was related to the carnival, and then him taking, I guess, a reflective approach on what he'd just endured. So each part of the carnival had a different lesson. One that stands out for me was he spoke to a fortune teller. It's been a while since I've read this book, but basically, she was telling him what the future looked like and said that he had a choice. He could choose to go down the pathway he was currently on, and the outcomes were going to remain the same, or he could wake up the next day and make a different decision. And for me, that was really pivotal.
Miss Shay, As a psychedelic psychologist, integrative mental health trauma, how would you relate your life to this book, Life's Golden Ticket?
Mm. As I said, the part of the book that really stood out for me was where Brendan had met the fortune teller, and she gave him an option of two choices in life to continue on the avenue that he was on or to change. And he had that choice. I really, in that moment, made the decision that I needed to do something else with my life. And I actually researched going back to uni. I didn't know what I was going to study at the time, and I never had an intention of going to be a psychologist. But a friend of mine had said to me at the time that they were interested in psychology. I enrolled and started. That was a couple of months after I'd read this book. So really, I felt I had applied the lesson of, taking life by the horns and making my own decision around what I want my future to look like.
Secondary characters often represent challenges or lessons. How did make this book give you more lessons for that?
I think the lesson out of this book for me was really around reflection. I had generally lived my life quite in the moment. Being a young adult at the time, I was going through all of this. My life, I was really living day to day and wasn't really reflecting on what I had been through or how I could use what I'd learnt to really improve my life in the future. So for me, it was really around learning reflective practice.
Yes, indeed. So, forgiveness, courage, and letting go. Is this
Mm.
one of lessons that you learn from the book?
Absolutely. And it's a lesson I then had taken into my studies and now into my practice as a psychologist.
Can you give a specific example of lessons that you let it go?
It's hard and that can be a loaded question. Um, it can also be a loaded request for somebody to just let it go. In
Yes.
my clinical practice, I have this conversation with my patients quite often, and it's not about letting go as if to forgive and forget as if it never happened, but more or less letting yourself have the compassion towards yourself that something hard has happened and that you have come out the other side. And the acceptance of letting go is really allowing yourself to continue to live in your present moment of life and live in your future self and future life by not being impacted by somebody else's decisions. Because at the end of the day, as adults, we all have our own choice.
Indeed. Speaking of choice, what role does choice play in the novel? How did you explore the choices?
Great question. From what I can recall, and as I said, it's been a few years since I've read this book, choices came in different waves for the author. And the way it was portrayed in the book was really you can choose to do something different to get a different outcome. Or if you keep wishing for a different outcome and choose to do nothing, nothing changes. That is a metaphor as old as time, isn't it? It's choosing to do nothing and expecting a different outcome and nothing changes, right?
Yes.
And in this book, I think that's a really strong theme of you do get a second chance in life. You get the choice to choose that second chance.
Very well said, Mishai. Very well said. Beautifully articulated. The carnival is both literal and symbolic. How did you use this surreal atmosphere to your life itself?
Well, I guess life is like a carnival in very symbolic ways. You know, sometimes there are tigers out in the world and we have to battle those. Sometimes we feel like we're sitting in a crowd just observing things go by. And other times it feels like we're faced with fortune tellers that keep predicting our futures. But really, we get a choice in all of that as to what role we play. So the metaphor of the carnival is important because if you look at broad society, there are so many crossover representations of that very thing.
Yes. How did you process the blending of allegory and emotional realism of the book to your life?
Mm. I guess for me, as I was reading this book, I was able to reflect on my own journey. And although this book is fiction to a degree, it is also partly based on Brendan's journey as well. I was able to live through that moment in the time. As I said, I was recovering from a serious car accident myself. That is the premise of the book. That's where it started. And really learning to just be with where I was at the time, knowing that I had a choice, I could do something different about it, but also focusing on the future and then reflecting on the past. So, really, it was an integration of the lessons from that book that I was able to put into real time. It was exactly what I was living.
Indeed. So, Michelle, were there a scenes or lessons in the book that emerged unexpectedly as you reading it?
Not unexpectedly, I didn't realize myself how much I would resonate with the book. And I didn't realize how impactful the book would be, not only on my life, but also on my mental state at the time and how I felt.
Yes, indeed. How did you approach pacing of or pacing while you reading the book itself to invest to yourself as your guidance, as your inspiration of the book?
Mm. I haven't thought about it like that. It's not a very long book.
A short one.
It is a short one. I found myself getting lost in the pages to the point that I would sort of lose time. But in the very same sense, I would also flag things to go back to. I know there was a couple of moments where I had put the book down to really consider what I'd just read or reread a page a second time just to concrete or cement that information for myself.
What advice from the novel do you return the most often in your own life?
Mm. I guess not just my life, but in my broader practice of being a psychologist, is you have a choice every single day. You have a choice to do something different. You have a choice to stand up for yourself. You have a choice to make a difference. You have a choice to do something that you want to do. And if you choose not to, that's a choice as well.
Yes, it's own, it's your own choice, people.
Yeah.
And Miss Shay, very well said. Very well said again. And a psychedelic psychologist and integrative mental health and trauma, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Oh, my long term goals for my clinical practice is really to see psychedelic therapy be more accessible in my local community. You know, there are a lot of people I see every day that have been through similar instances that I have with motor vehicle accidents or work related accidents. And I see myself in their own journeys because I understand where they are. And when you go through quite a large accident like that, it changes your perception of life and it challenges your sense of identity. And I know that broadly, psychedelic assisted therapy has the potential to really help people overcome those challenges, both within themselves, but also emotionally. And in Australia, we have approved psychedelic assisted therapy for treatment resistant depression and post traumatic stress disorder. And sometimes that could be what happens when people do endure these large accidents or life changing events. So, my long term and my short term goal is both to be able to serve my local community and be able to support people with these treatments in our clinical setting in a safe place. But the long term goal is also to see the access of these therapies be widened. Beyond that, my short and long term goals would be to encourage people to take ownership of their choices. As I said, it's a choice to make a choice to do nothing, and it's a choice to make a choice to do something different.
The worst thing to do is to do nothing, as they said. And again, Miss Shai, I like the way you say it. Very well said. Very empowering. And good luck to your goals, hoping for more success. How do you hope the story helps people facing their own carnival of challenges or
Mm.
regrets?
I would recommend people read this book, even if you're not an avid reader. And if you've been through quite a stressful life event or anything that I've said resonates with you today, I can assure you, you will take at least something away from this book. It is very simple, but it is very powerful. The art of being able to reflect on your life, reflect on your journey, reflect on your strength and courage to have been able to face adversity and keep going. It doesn't come to us easily. And in the moment when we're trying to survive, we forget and we lose compassion for ourselves. And I think this book is a nice reminder for people to understand that bad things happen, but we have the potential and we have the courage within ourselves to keep going or use these experiences to do something different with our life that can impact people in a positive way or impact yourself in a positive way.
Yes, indeed. And can you share an example of how someone applied the book lessons to their personal growth?
Mm, how to apply it to personal growth. Okay. If I think about the part of the book that was probably the most impactful for me, and again, this is going back to the fortune teller, I think the most important thing that people might be able to apply for their personal growth is really around reflecting on your life with where you are at currently. Are you happy and are you at your goals? Or are your goals somewhere else? Look at where you want to go, reverse engineer a plan, and see what different choices you need to make or that you can make to get closer to your goal. We all have goals because they motivate us, and we need goals to get up in the morning, to get dressed, to eat food, to put clothes on, to go to work. We all have aspirations. You get a choice about how far you move towards or away from those aspirations based on how much you can reflect and take lessons and learnings away from your experiences every single day.
Mishai, if you could add one more chapter or character to the book today, what would it explore?
Hmm. I've never thought about adding a chapter to a book.
I want you to be the author now of the book
Hmm.
itself, if you want to
That's a
add.
big ask. That is a big ask. I'm thinking back to the book And if I recall correctly, don't hold me to this, but if I
No worries.
recall
No worries.
correctly, I feel like the ending was quite abrupt. They left the carnival, they had their lessons, and that was kind of it. Maybe another chapter to the book could be about maybe taking those lessons back into a workplace or back into the home environment and how they could apply. So in the carnival setting, it was around choices to play the games or be involved with what was going on at the carnival. And while we can interpret those in how best it fits our understanding or how best it fits our perception, maybe another chapter to add is how that could actually apply in the home environment or in the relationships that you have that are closest to you.
Very well said and challenging answer, Mishai. Beautifully articulated. So, what is the most common misconception readers have about the story message as a reader itself?
I've had a look at some of the reviews about this book, and I don't see there being a common misconception. I haven't noticed any comments online from people that have read this book about being a misconception, but maybe the title is a bit, um, maybe, what would a word be for this? Not off putting, but a bit bold. So, life's golden ticket, yes, we all won the lotto when we were born. That is, that's a saying that's been around since the dawn of time as well. But life's golden ticket, while it may be hinting at a second chance, that could also be a misconception about what the book is trying to portray.
Yes, indeed. I won the lotto already. Both of us, Mishai, both
The
of
lotto of
us,
life.
we
Sure.
won. Thank
Mm.
God. And Misha, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and of course my book 101 review in fifth season, comedy 101 in second season, and food 101 in its fifth season as well. Geography 101 and Food Love Letters in third season, and my baby podcast, Mental Health 101, Movie 101 review, and Music 101 in its fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Miss Shy, how does life's golden ticket reflect your broader philosophy about resilience and human potential?
Mm. It comes through in all of my clinical work. As I said, this was the book that set me off on the pathway to start studying psychology. I spent 7 years at university studying psychology. I have 3 degrees in psychology. It, it, it really created the bedrock of everything I do in my clinical practice. And that's really about, like you said, the resilience, but it was about choice. I made a choice to go to university. I made a choice to stay at university. And now I made a choice to turn up every day in clinical practice and support people just like you, your listeners, people like me. I believe that healing is possible and people can make a choice about whether they want to start that journey for themselves.
Miss Shai Hipperson, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and knowledge to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your business itself?
Sure, you can find us at Conscious Mind Centre, consciousmindcentre.com.au, and we are located on the Gold Coast near Brisbane in Queensland, Australia.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Shai Hipperson because if you support her, more and more and more empowering business to come. So, Miss Shai, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Daniel.
More to come, people. See you soon.